Welcome to Labor Lounge Podcast. I'm Anthony Abrantes, Assistant Executive Secretary Treasurer of the Eastern Atlantic States Regional Council of Carpenters, the Carpenters Union.
And I'm Cyndie Williams, Executive Director of the CCT. Together as your co-hosts, we'll explore the world of organized labor, bringing you behind-the-scenes stories and insights from inspiring union leaders, dedicated partners, and community change makers. In each episode, we dive into authentic conversation to uncover what unions are really about beyond the headlines and the myths.
Whether you're new to the movement or a union ally, our conversation, showcasing diverse voices and real-life stories, will explore union hurdles, triumphs, labor's rich history, its role in workforce development, all while shedding light on how unions create lasting change and foster economic growth and creating generational wealth.
Join us as we build a broader coalition, elevate future generations, and showcase how unions contribute to creating a positive cultural legacy.
Tune in, get informed, and find out how organized labor is making a difference. Today we're joined by Jon Young, Political Director of the Eastern Atlantic States Regional Council of Carpenters. A union member since 1996, Jonathan has served as a council representative since 2006 and has been a Camden County Commissioner since 2015. He is also the President of the New Jersey Association of Counties and Vice President of the Southern New Jersey Building Trades Council. Jonathan is a strong advocate for fair wages, union apprenticeship, and labor standards. He works closely with local vocational schools and public policy organizations to support growth of skilled trades in Southern New Jersey. And in 2022, he received the Humanitarian of the Year Award from the Southern New Jersey Central Labor Council. Good morning, John, and welcome.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Good morning, John. Welcome.
Good morning.
We're really excited to have you here today.
I'm excited to be here.
Anthony and I are looking to dive in, just get to know you a little bit more. Even though we do know you, we work alongside of you.
Sure.
Just happy to hear your story a little bit deeper.
Sure.
So welcome.
Yeah.
If you were talking to someone who knew nothing about the construction industry and you could only tell them one thing, what would it be?
Meaning that there's no, if I look back at my life and why I ended up getting into the Carpenters Union and what changed me about it, honest living, good wages, good benefits, the whole 30-second clip, right? But I think it's more than that. I think it was the fact of the brotherhood. It was the fact of my way of giving back and knowing that this brotherhood particularly gives back a lot, I think is what really was a great fit for us. So if anybody really wants to change their life, that they have no desire to, go the college route or do anything else, building trades are the best thing to do.
With that said, what do you think is, and there's probably many of them, what do you think the biggest misconception is in the construction industry or union construction industry?
I would think it would be, the two most would be, one would be, when they talk about our wages and our benefits, and how much money we make and how good our benefits are. The misconception is of how hard we actually work for that money and those benefits. People don't realize those benefits just aren't given to us. It's work hours that are created. So the more you work, the better opportunity you have of better benefits, the better opportunity you have of a better pension, right? So it's all about work hours. So it's not like, if I take a day off, I'm going to get this pay, because we're not, right? Yep. So we pretty much work the hours that we have. And I think the other biggest misconception is the fact that we're inaccessible, or the exclusivity of the unions themselves. And it's just quite the opposite, right? I think that if you look at the unions as a whole, we're probably more diverse than most work sites or most work industries that are out there. In fact, we make it a point to make sure that we have an opportunity for minorities and women to be able to get into the trades and make a better life for themselves. Mm-hmm.
Can you just touch a little bit deeper on that? What are some of the programs that are out there that are designed specifically to meet those needs?
So, when we talk today, we'll talk, mainly about Carpenters, because that's what we do, right? We have the Sisters of the Brotherhood. We have the CART program. I've been around these rooms for 30 years. There are women and minorities that are in leadership roles that are within our ranks of the union. So, these are the type of things that we have. We have the ability to become in as an apprentice, and work your way right through the ranks, right?
Yeah, and we were just fortunate enough last week to be out in Vegas And I was telling Cyndie and some other folks that that was the first time. Obviously, every time we go out there, it's a great experience,
Yep.
great educational
Yep.
piece. But that was the first time where I felt like we actually got to the foundation of our organization, which was how do we change people's lives, socioeconomically and through generational wealth. And at one point on day one, everyone was talking about, why they're an organizer. And we gave rank and file the ability to get up to the mic and tell their story. And some of those stories were, and even yourself got up, were extremely impactful.
Yep.
An apprentice who, was living in his car and then got into the apprenticeship program. 3 weeks later, he had housing.
Yeah.
And there was so many of those stories from so many different people, so many different walks of life, so many different backgrounds and communities that was the first time that I heard it. I've seen it. First time I've heard it, and I think that was extremely impactful. And that's why it's important that we always represent the communities that we serve. I think you're dead on.
Yep.
Great. And for our listeners out there, just to build that back, the United Brotherhood of Carpenters has a learning hub in Las Vegas that they send folks out for training. They bring in instructors. They host events and bring membership even out there for education and leadership roles. So you were out there for a conference last week together as a team, bringing others from the country to learn from each other as well. So
and the
just
most
wanted to mention that.
the craziest thing about and like Anthony said, every time we go out there it was great, right? And I believe that we have the most active general president ever. There's not a program that does not run out there in Vegas that him himself does not come to and speak, whether it's 30-year apprentices, whether it's 212, whether it's journeyman leadership things, whatever it is, he's always out there and addressing, and we'll sit there and take questions, right? And I don't know any other general presidents out there that do that does not run away from their membership, but actually listens and implements what they say. So he's a very, very, very active general president.
One of the things that you mentioned under misconceptions, and it ties into, what we do related to creating opportunity for folks, is you said that, other organizations, other entities, corporate America, the people that are telling us how to run our operations, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Always say that we lack diversity,
Yep.
right? But when we look at their leadership or we look at what they're doing,
Yep.
they don't even come close to what we've done.
That's right.
And in many of those cases, that just goes back to, one of the first episodes we talked about is that divide and conquer mentality. Like, how do we hold people back, which is, well, let's get them to fight amongst each other
Yep.
while we make more and more money and gain more and more power. So I'm glad you brought that up because that's extremely important to understand is, we walk the walk, we talk the talk, and we showcase what we do. And it's been extremely beneficial to the communities that we serve.
Yep, for sure.
Absolutely. Okay, so you've been deeply involved within the United Brotherhood of Carpenters since 1996. Can you tell us about your journey with the union and how your experiences have shaped your new role as political director for Eastern Atlantic States Regional Council?
It seems like it was yesterday, like 30 years just flies by now almost, So I guess my journey started off, most like, just like most, I guess. Well, not most, I'm not the typical tradesperson, meaning that, my father or my grandfather or my uncle was not in the trades unions and all. I got into construction back in mid 80s, probably when I was in 9th, 10th grade, somewhere around there. There's a little project going on across the street from my house. And I decided, hey, let me go over here and fiddle around a little bit. My mom worked in a real estate office. So I went over there and I started working for this non-union contractor and really had a good knack with my hands and really started to understand that, I could make some good living with them. Ran backhoes and just did a whole lot of just miscellaneous stuff. They were prefab houses. Then moved over to New Jersey. Got out of work for a little bit and found my wife, and we moved over to Jersey. And was doing door-to-door sales. And my father-in-law was an architect, and he asked me, he said, "Hey, listen, gonna have a baby, doing door-to-door sales. Not a whole lot coming in for my daughter, and my new grandson coming in. What do you want to do? Do you want to, I got an opportunity for you to get back into construction in the city of Camden." So they got me in there as in a minority participation program in the city of Camden, and ended up going down there and ended up working with the Carpenters at that point. And they fell in love with me, and I really started to find this bond and this brotherhood and this understanding and felt like I found somewhere that I really belonged. And went on from there, and from day one was like really aggressive. I joined the VOC. Back in there was the voluntary organizing committee. Really just started to get in, and I was back in there stuffing envelopes and just making a difference. And I think that's where I really started to fall in love with the political side of it, and what do we do, the community service side of it. My father was always huge into community service, so I think that somewhere was always in me. It just needed to find a pathway to come out in order for me to use it. So I started to go on. 10 years came down the line, and we talk about that change. And so they decided to do a hiring process. So they made a call in New Jersey. It was 300 plus people that went out. No, I'm sorry, it was 160 people or so that went out for the interview. We ended up taking a 3-day interview, and I ended up getting hired. 10 years into the field and going through and just kind of just making my way through and just trying to find out, where do I fit? And again, when we look at the rooms and we look at everything around me, not too many people who look like me were in those rooms, right? And it wasn't because, I don't think a lot of it, because if I look at our brotherhood as the Carpenters, right, we were always that front runner. We always thought ahead, right? We always seen 10 years down the road of what our organization is going to look like. And I think they started to see that. So I had an opportunity to really make some differences and make some changes. Thrown down in Camden County is a tough road to hoe down there, but we made some really good differences. And then just, ended up meeting people. And these guys just kind of put me on their shoulders or placed, I had stood on their shoulders, and they took me under the wing and just kind of started to show me the way things should be. And then politics just became a really good, something that I really like to do. Just making a difference in the community is something I really like to do. So I really started to push my career a little bit further and go that extra mile and keep going that extra mile to make the difference. And again, then you get a platform as a young black man in an organization where you can make a difference. Well, how do I use it, right? I'm only as good as if I give it back to it, right? So that's why I just really, started getting involved into the CART programs and to making sure that other minorities have an opportunity to be able to come and just be able for me to tell my story of a little poor boy from Southeast Delco that came over to New Jersey, spent 10 years in the field, and now have an opportunity. Now I've been around almost 30 years, and now I'm in a position now where, I'm overseeing 6 states in Washington, D.C., right? And through my career, it was all faith. And I never said to myself, I think I want to be the political director, or I think I want to be, I just kind of fell into something, grasped a hold of it, and just went the extra mile for it. And then wherever that road took me, And then it would always seem to find itself in that right vein for me to be able to get where I am today. We had the story 2 years ago, right, or a year ago. I'm 55 years old, right? Thinking that you have your ceiling, you are where your ceiling is. It's you think you're at your ceiling, and then all of a sudden your phone rings and you get a phone call to come in and to be asked to become the political director, and that's just due to hard work, right? And just due staying true to yourself, staying true to your organization, and just really trying to make a difference and not doing anything outside of myself, right? But just kind of really just being true to what it is. And I say this all the time. After 29 years, it'd be 30 years in January. This industry does not owe me one thing, not one thing. I owe everything that I have to this industry. So that's why I think now it's even more where I get into a position where I can really make some serious decisions and some serious change. It's just an opportunity that I do not take lightly at all.
So John, probably one of the most important things that I don't think people realize in our industry is that there is an absolute correlation with good policy and the success of labor movement and worker protections. You've been fortunate enough to be a union leader, an elected official. Let's tell the listeners, let's tell the folks a little bit about how good policy actually impacts good union jobs, because I don't think people understand that.
So when you look at the labor movement here in the state of New Jersey and the things that we were able to do, The one thing that really comes to mind are project labor agreements. And project labor agreements are a way of to doing a couple things. It's ensuring that the job is done on time, it's done on the budget. It ensures that community involvement is involved in it. Is ensured that local people are involved in the job as well. And it's just a way for us to really say to the folks of the state of New Jersey that, hey, listen, your taxpayers' dollars are paying for this project, right? So why shouldn't you have an opportunity to guarantee yourself to work on this project? And that's what project labor agreements do for you. Or when you try to level the playing field by making sure that your misclassification laws are in place. We're making sure that prevailing wage is a good number, that everybody's not racing themselves to the bottom for wages. Those type of policies really increase your chances of becoming a very productive member of the middle class. And I think that's one thing that unions do for the state, and I think that's something that we do. Listen, I don't know who said if you're not, right, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. Right? Yep. And it's a real simple statement. We fight so hard to be at the table. We're no different from lawyers or soccer moms who had an issue, who wanted to make a change and make a difference. I don't need a room full of lawyers, right, telling me how to run a construction site or what's good for construction workers, right? So in order for us to get our message across, we need a seat at the table. And this is what this allows us to do when we get ourselves elected in these positions, to have a seat at the table, so there's a real voice of labor at that table talking common sense laws and policies.
Yep. So you've had a long career, a successful career. What would you say, and there's probably synergy between the two, or how would you identify success, whether it's in your personal life or being a union leader?
So there's a poem by Linda Ellis called "The Dash." And The Dash it's about a story of a man who passed away, and at his funeral, the first thing they say is, hey, Joe died he was born in 1921 and died in 1982, right? But people don't realize it's the dash in between those years that's your life, right? And that's what's important. So for me, it's, what success looks like to me is success is, what that story tells at the end of the day, right? Whether it's if I'm retiring or whether I'm in stretched out in front of the congregation, right? And how I live that dash and what's important and what's success. Success to me is not about, how many titles I have, how much money I've made, right? But it's the difference and the impacts that I've made in other people's lives. I can remember being a baseball coach and, winning a couple championships, doing a couple different things. And the greatest thing ever was to be able to walk through a supermarket and have that kid come up to you later on in life and say, hey, coach, you made a difference in my life, right? Great, really great story of what success truly looks like in that same vein. Had a kid. This kid must have been, we were doing 10-year-old basketball, and he was a short something, man. But I used him as my point guard. He had a lot of heart, a lot of grit. We won a championship with him. He ended up going off being a doctor. Now, I only seen him for 2 years. Single mom, was raised, right? The kid was a good kid. When he graduated from medical school, his mom reached back out to me to find me, to invite me to a graduation party, because whatever happened in those 2 years, I touched his life. And I made a difference in his life. That's what success is to me in this business.
The one thing that you said is extremely important is that, the industry doesn't owe you anything. You owe everything to the industry. We're in one of those few industries, at least in our role, coming up through an organization or a brotherhood, where that is our mindset, right? If you look at all the other industries out there, the reality is it's always like, well, what's in it for me? Like you're entitled to something.
Yep.
We don't have that mindset, and that's why we make true, holistic, sustainable change versus transactional change.
Yep, absolutely.
One of the things that you had mentioned, and now we're fast forwarding 30 years. So you were stuffing envelopes, you're playing politics when you first got in. Now you're the political director, and you have the ability to actually make change through good public policy.
Yep.
What do you think, or what are you working on now that related to policy that's going to help protect workers?
Well, one thing that we do is listen, and our footprint and across the country is one thing that's always probably the most important thing, and that's misclassification, right? And trying to make people understand that and I don't want to lump all non-union folks into this thing, right? Because the fact of the matter is there are some decent non-union contractors out there who actually care about their workers, right? And go. But for the ones who don't, right? It's modern day slavery, right? So for me, and knowing that my heritage and the slavery that was happened and the way that they were paid nothing, right, in order for them to build or do whatever, and now they just say to us, now they say to the population now, hey, listen, we won't do the same to you, but we will do the same to you. We'll just, we'll pay you a little bit of money for a lot of work, right? And we'll just, we'll just exploit you, and we don't care, right? And for me to, again, have a platform to be able to stop that or have something, an ability to slow that down and make a change, is huge to me, right? I can't go here and turn a blind eye knowing that, my great grandparents went through the same slavery train as these individuals who are coming across here looking for a better life, right? And they're just getting taken advantage of. And it's not their fault, right? Because where they're coming from is a really bad situation. And they're just trying to come over here and trying to figure it out. And here you have these moguls who don't care about anything but a dollar to be able to do it. So when we talk about misclassification, that's something that we really try to do. Safety is always important. Always trying to raise the standards. Always trying to make sure that somebody has a good living. Because at the end of the day, it's not about, Anthony, I think you said it always, and you said it the best, right? Is that the Carpenters Union, we're a capitalist with a conscience, right? Meaning that we understand business, we love business, we like to make money, but we care about people. We want to make sure that people are making their money as well. And if everybody in the industry would just follow that simple little motto, we'd be a much better place.
You think after 140 years, we've been around for 140 years, right? And our organization was founded on some of the same things you just said about, immigrants coming over 140 years ago, back in 1881, being exploited, being taken advantage of, crazy working hours, no safety conditions. They organized back then to address those issues. Over 140 years later, immigrant community coming to the country, we're dealing with the same thing, but it sometimes even worse sometimes. And I don't think the average person even has a sense of what's actually happening in the construction industry. And that's like what we're fighting for every day, including our elected officials, which is who you're working with, to try to educate them on what's happening.
And I think that's so important, because here in the state of New Jersey, we're trying to pass a law now to make schools put union labor, right, or the labor movement back into the books, right? And because look, at the end of the day, it's all about education, right? These folks today don't know about the labor movement, right? Because there was a time period where they took us out of the picture, right? And they said, hey, don't do this, go to college. We want everybody to go to college. That big 80s push of everybody going, 80s and 90s, everybody going to college. Well, now there's this big gap in this industry, right? And now we have to be able to fill it back. But that gap is there, but no one's there to tell the people coming behind them how that gap got there, right? Or what the purpose of that gap is, right? And for us to be able to go back and explain the labor movement and really get deep in detail into it, you might catch a kid at 10th grade, 9th grade, just all of a sudden the light bulb goes on and go, you know what? You're right. I like the labor movement. I think this is the right thing to do. And who knows what they could become at that point.
And I think as leaders, it's our duty to bring to light some of these issues that continue to repeat themselves with history, right? And so we have this platform now to do that with the podcast and just express our voices and bring others into the conversation. That's what I'm so excited about this particular podcast, is we're broadening our audience and hoping to connect to people outside of our organization to talk about this same issue and how it affects others in their community and how we build generational wealth going forward. So it's really exciting. So in your mind, is that the most significant issue facing our industry? Is that, in fact, wage misclassification, taking advantage of workers? Or is there something else specifically that
I think that's externally? Like externally, I think that's something that really, is affecting us. But I think internally, We're looking at aging out, right? And we're looking at how do we get that next generation to be able to come in? And I think it's ways like, we're trying to do here in New Jersey by, implementing the labor movement back into the curriculum, so people start to understand what's going on. Because listen, at the end of the day, we need folks that are going to work in this industry for 30 years plus, right? So, there's a lot of good eggs that are out there that are in their 30s, their mid 30s now, and they can give us a good 20 years. But, if you can imagine this. In today's world where health insurance is so crazy, right? You needing that extra hand in the house, or that extra paycheck that comes to the house. Imagine if you can get an 18-year-old kid to graduate high school, right? Starting off making at least $45,000 a year with its own benefits and the whole 9 yards. What does that do for that family, right? Not for just that individual, but how does it make a difference in that family's life, right? And I think that's what the labor movement really starts to do. It really starts to bring family together. Even when we talk about inner city kids, you got a kid from the city of Camden, city of Philadelphia, or Trenton, or wherever they're from, and they're struggling, right? Whatever the case may be. And now all of a sudden, they got benefits. They got a steady paycheck coming in, right? They're making a difference. They got a little pride in themselves. And it makes a world of difference. When I started working in the city of Camden, I did my first pre-apprenticeship program down there. I used to tell folks down there, the city was so bad at the time. I used to tell folks down there, listen, this is what you need to do. You get the hell out of the city. Move, right? Now I tell them just the opposite, right? Stay here. Rebuild, right? Because the city's making that change. And most cities are making that change, right? But they can only stay and only afford it if they can really have a good, healthy, and honest living. And I truly believe that the building trades are totally that.
Yeah, and I think to your point, we don't want folks getting pushed out of the communities they came from. But how do we prevent that? It's good, sustainable jobs that have health care, living wages. They get to go to work safely and come home to their family. And I mean, how many stories have we heard? I mean, we even heard out in Vegas where, you bring in a young kid from the community, you change his life. Now all of a sudden
they leave.
They leave, or their mom or dad, who maybe didn't have the same opportunity as that kid, is now starting to ask, how can they get in a union? Right.
Yes.
And they're middle aged, right?
Yep.
So that's how you create generational wealth. And not only are you affecting that individual, their family, but you're changing the community as a whole.
Absolutely.
And I think one of the things you brought up about, policy and educating folks is, I think one of the first episodes we talk about the white collar versus blue collar divide. And there was that generational gap where everybody was going to college, right?
Sure.
And it's kind of kicking back, which is great. But the problem is most of the folks in corporate America, white collar America, have no idea where we got to where we got. Why they have a 40-hour work week, why they have sick leave, parental leave, maternal leave, family leave. It's because working class blue collar folks fought for those things.
Absolutely.
So it's extremely important that they know who did that, who fought for it, and what the labor movement stood for, because it wasn't just about unions.
Right.
Because there were no unions at the time. It was about protecting people, and that was all people. And I think it's extremely important that we broaden that group, and that was one of the reasons we started talking about this podcast. How do we tell our own story versus having somebody else tell our story, which isn't always true. So it's important that we continue to do that.
That's true. We fly a flag for Labor Day along the beach right here on our Jersey shore, and it's always a conversation, right, about the labor movement and what it did. And folks just that I'm friendly with on the beach, I have this moment of conversation with them about what it meant, the whole 8-hour workday, the weekend, and you bring it into those types of everyday conversations in ways that that change people's thought pattern on what it means to be unionized. And it's always a message that I can get behind and talk about, and I'm happy to do it. So that said, some of the local connections that you make in regard to your position as a commissioner in Camden County, your connection to the schools in Camden County. Can you talk a little bit about how you create that holistic approach to job opportunities for folks in your area?
Sure. And again, listen, it's, technical schools are coming back, right? Just like we talked about that gap, right, where people say, hey, go to college. Now everybody's saying, hey, go to trade school, right? Go join a trade, go get into a trade. And so you're starting to see some of these traditional programs are starting to come back. So we've really started to craft the vocational school back to its traditional form, and where we have our retired instructors that are teaching in some of these vocational schools. We're all on advisory boards, and we're really honing in and making sure that these folks have a liable career path and an entryway into some of these local unions. When we start to go and we start to talk to these classes, I don't go in there and give them this 30,000 view. I give them to them straight raw. I'll go and I'll have these honest conversations about what the industry is really about. And I think that's the best thing you can do for them. Because listen, at the end of the day, it's not all cookies and cream out in the construction industry. It's a tough world. You got to have a little bit of thick skin, right? And you got to be able to go and just go to work. And understand something. A lot of folks don't have the example of folks getting up every morning at 7 o'clock or 6:30 in the morning, going out the door to go to work, right? So there's this missing piece that's there. And when I'm able to go out and have these conversations with these students about our industry and what we do and how good the industry is, I just talk more than hey, it's a good job with good wages and good benefits, and you really give them the true story of it. And I think that's what really, makes a valuable candidate. Listen, if a journeyman carpenter works all year long, he's making over $100,000 a year. We claim to be that best, so that's what we want, right? We expect the best of the best. When you come into our organization, we want the best of the best to be inside of our organization. So that's what we kind of try to recruit.
Yeah, and I think, you mentioned a couple programs. We have the Sisters of Brotherhood, we have CARP, we have the 311 program where we're working up in Newark. We have, obviously, our, organic, recruitment, which is bringing a lot of people into the organization. But we also have intentional recruitment programs to make sure we're in those communities. But I think one of the things you touched on was coming into organizations great, the training's great, the wages, the benefits are great. But if you don't have a mentorship or a support system to help guide people along,
that's right.
That could also set them up for failure.
Yep.
And I think being part of an organization like ourselves, with all the support that we have, with all the people that come from so many different backgrounds, you can always find somebody that either looks like you, understands where you come from,
absolutely,
went through the same scenario as you, that can bring that support into your life, even if you didn't have it at home. But I think, to your point, there's also a balance. Like, we want to give everybody an opportunity, but we pride ourselves in being the best, most productive, disciplined, safe, qualified master craftsman in the industry. That's why we can, expect those wages and benefits. But we have to be productive for our employers. And you mentioned, that, there's a balance between capitalism and good paying jobs, and we don't necessarily have to sacrifice one for the other. But we always got to make sure that our employers are successful.
That's right.
Because then they create more jobs for carpenters, which is what our business is.
Yep. Right.
And I think that's extremely important. And then I think the other thing that we fail to mention, or I think, listeners or folks that are not in our industry, is that this is an industry of smart people. Just because it's blue collar doesn't mean they're not intelligent.
Yep.
We have some of the brightest people in the industry. More and more people are coming out of college, coming into the trades, wishing they didn't go to college because they didn't have to pay all that student debt. But now, just as an organization ourselves, we have articulation agreements with almost every university in the region.
Yep.
We have our college accreditation, where now people going through our apprentice program are coming out with 60 credits. So we bring value on both sides, the technical side and the higher education side. And I think that's important for people just to understand.
Absolutely.
Because we don't have to sacrifice education to work hard with your hands and your heart.
That's right.
But to your point on the equity piece, and going back to that, is that is the part that is so very important when you're connecting to those types of communities that don't have exactly what they need to get started.
That's right.
We have those programs connected and tied to that help them get to and from the job if needed. Mm-hmm. That mentorship piece that you talked about, taking the time to talk to them, is a mentorship piece, right? You're setting them straight on a course to say, these are our expectations, and yes, you can meet those expectations. And I believe you can, right? So taking that extra 2 seconds to develop that story for them may mean them getting in and succeeding, or getting in and failing.
Yep.
Right.
Yep,
So
I agree.
that is the equity piece that I love to just talk about, because we are building that type of program out. We're taking time to mentor people. We're building those spaces where they can feel safe and talk and thrive. So, really happy that you're doing that. Really happy that you're out there, that you're a face for people to look at in a leadership role.
Sure.
I think similarly, we share that value.
Yep.
And it's so important for us not just to be in the position, like you said, but to be in the position and do something with it.
That's right.
I'll close on that. I think it's been an awesome interview. really happy to work alongside of you, but also to have everyone out there listening get to know you as well.
I appreciate you guys letting me tell my story.
Yeah,
Thank
no,
you.
we appreciate the story because the people that hear the story and realize that they could be in this seat one day or have the same opportunities you do is really what is the most impactful piece of what we're trying to accomplish. That everybody really has an opportunity of being part of the labor movement in our organization. So thank you, John.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Yep.
Thanks.